Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to this Practice 1 and Practice 2 review for the 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Yes, it is the final race weekend of 2018. This season has just flown by. It seems as though the first couple of races were only a month ago. It has just flown by. It has been a great season as well. And hopefully you guys are doing well as well, no matter where you are in the world, whether that's the Americas, Europe, the UK, Australia, Asia, Africa, Middle East, wherever you are. Hopefully you're all doing well. And let's get into this practice review, shall we? So, if you have missed out on the practice 1 and 2 results, I am now going to take you through them. So the top 10 in practice 1 was Max Verstappen fastest, from Ricciardo second, Bottas third, Hamilton fourth, and then very impressively Ocon and Magnussen 5th and 6th, and then the two Ferraris of Raikkonen and Vettel 7th and 8th, and then Carlos Sainz in 9th and Romain Grosjean in P10. And then your bottom 10 is Pierre Gasly, Nico Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez, Brendan Hartley, Lance Stroll, Antonio Giovinazzi. Of course, for the moment, a Friday driver, but of course he's driving for Sauber in 2019. Then Ericsson is 17th, Van Dorn 18th, Alonso 19th, Robert Kubica in 20th. For now, is a Friday driver, but we'll get on to why he is not a Friday or a reserve driver for 2019 very shortly. But we'll move on from those results and go on to the results of practice 2. The most important practice session by far this weekend. And this is your top 10. So Bottas fastest, Verstappen second, Ricciardo third, Hamilton fourth, Raikkonen fifth and Vettel in 6th. And then completing the top 10 is Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Magnussen and Esteban Ocon. Also news to do with him today, which we'll get on to later on. And the bottom 10, again, Pierre Gasly in P11, and then Sainz in 12th, Alonso 13th, Perez 14th, and then Leclerc, Hartley, Ericsson, Van Dorn, Stroll, and Sorokin. So, those are the results for practice here in Abu Dhabi. And first off, as ever, let's get into the top 3 teams. Starting off with Mercedes, who, if you look at today and their pace, it's no real surprise. They've done exactly what we thought they would do. They're about where we thought they would be. I'm not 100% sure right now they have the fastest car in either qualifying or race trim. When it comes to qualifying, I think that'll have to be decided basically tomorrow, because I think Ferrari are holding a bit back. And for the race, I don't think they do have the fastest car, but that's no real surprise because, of course, Red Bull's car is so good when it comes to race day. But yeah, Mercedes are about where I expect them to be. Valtteri Bottas, I do have to say though, is looking very good. Also though, no real surprise, because just look at last season where at this track he got pole, he got the fastest lap in the race, and he won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So no real surprises from Mercedes today. So pretty much a bog standard session. I'm really interested though to see where they are compared to Ferrari in practice 3 and of course qualifying. I get a feeling that if they do get pole, they are going to be so close to Ferrari in terms of lap time. I think it's very close between Mercedes and Ferrari once Ferrari turn it up on Saturday. But yeah, pretty much as we expected from the Silver Arrows. Next up, we'll go to the Scuderia Ferrari team now. As ever, on a Friday, Ferrari do or run a different program. They don't go for lap times. They try to kind of find the balance of the car instead of, again, going out for outright lap times. The reason in practice 1 they were P7 and P8 was because they were testing parts for 2019, so that's why they were so slow in that session. Then in practice 2, they started to develop the car for this weekend. And even though I do think they are running more fuel as they normally do on a Friday, they don't look too bad right now. And I've seen a couple of quotes from Sebastian Vettel saying the car can definitely be improved. from seeing it on the track, that is absolutely true. But I think once they take some fuel out the car and run it in a higher engine mode, I think that Ferrari will be very, very strong for pole position. It looks very good at this track, and I'm hoping that they actually, you know, for once, well, for the first time since, when's the last time they had pole? Monza, I think was the last time they had pole. Hopefully they actually deliver on what we think is going to be good pace in qualifying, because they haven't done so. Again, since Monza, they've been disappointing on the Saturdays and on the Sundays as well. So hopefully they do turn up tomorrow and get pole position, because it's definitely possible for Ferrari. And next up is Red Bull. Now, in practice one, they were dominant, but I think that was because, one, Mercedes and Ferrari weren't really pushing at all, and I think because, of course, practice one is held in the middle of the day in Abu Dhabi, so I think those hot conditions do suit the Red Bull car tyre-wise compared to Mercedes and Ferrari. But then, you know, once we got to the more representative practice 2 session, Red Bull were nowhere near as dominant and were, well, considering that Mercedes are not pushing as hard as they could, Red Bull were about equal. But as we know, when it comes to Saturday afternoons, Red Bull drop back to the 3rd row of the grid, and that's what I think they are going to do here, because in practice 2, Mercedes looked about the same as Red Bull, and Ferrari were only a quarter of a second off, and we know how much Mercedes and Ferrari gain from Friday to Saturday, and Red Bull tend to, I wouldn't say not improve, but there's no drastic or massive improvements from Friday practice going into Saturday qualifying. So for Red Bull, I think it will be a 3rd row start in qualifying, but for the race, their car again does look very good. Now, I know the conditions here and, you know, during the race are not going to be extremely hot, but despite that, I still think they have a very good car for race day, and I think because of how soft the tyres are, the softest tyres we could possibly have for this race, I think they are going to do well. Because as we saw in Brazil, they can make the softer compounds go longer and manage them better than Mercedes and Ferrari can. So forget about them when it comes to qualifying, but when it comes to the race, I think not only with Red Bull, but again with the Mercedes and Ferrari, we are in for a very interesting strategic 3-way battle for the race win on Sunday. And I cannot wait for the race, because I think it's going to be more interesting than qualifying, because I think qualifying in terms of pole position is between the two teams that are, of course, currently the top of the Constructors' Championship. But guys, what do you think about those top 3 teams? For Mercedes, do you think they can get pole position? I'm not too sure right now. I kind of have to wait until practice 3 when Ferrari turn it up and show more of their pace. For Ferrari, do you think they do have, once they turn their car up with their engine modes and take some fuel out of the car, do you think Ferrari have a fast enough car for pole position? And for Red Bull, well, let's be honest, forget about qualifying. For the race, do you think they are going to be able to go for the race win, just like they were able to in Brazil? Make sure you put your comments in the chat, and for the next, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I'll read out your comments regarding these top 3 teams. Right, let me take a look what you guys have to say. Great to see you guys as always. JB, hi Chaz, how's it going? It's going good. Hopefully going good with you as well. Just looking, Beacon F1 saying Ferrari have never had a front row here. That is true, but records are there to be broken, of course. Simon Troop, would you like to see Alex Jacques commentate for F1? I'll be honest, I don't know who that is. If you could educate me on who that is, then that'd be great. But I don't know who that is. Francisco, I heard that Mercedes are concerned that Lewis's engine will not last until the end of the race. Do you think it's probably? It's probably that will happen? I think you're trying to say, do you think Lewis's engine will blow? I don't know, to be honest. You can never know with with reliability issues, because I mean, you've seen drivers who have fresh power units put in, and then they have on the race, their first race with that power unit, a failure. And then drivers who maybe are on their last power unit having a very good race with reliability. So you can never know. I mean, the chances are good for a reliability problem for Lewis, but again, you can never know what's going to happen with those types of things. You just have to wait and see what happens. Rona Brady, hello, how are you keeping? I'm all good. Hopefully everyone in the chat is having a good Friday. John Hubner, grid penalties or not, everyone should run new power unit and run wide open. I haven't seen... I don't know if Pierre Gasly, we'll get onto him later. I don't know if Pierre Gasly has a penalty, but I think everyone is just about okay. But again, that could change tomorrow, or going into the race on Sunday. Ivan Jones, do you see a lot of on-track action happening this weekend compared to last year? I think we will see more on-track overtaking this year than we did last year. The reason I think that is because I think the battle for the win is more competitive than it was this time last year, and I think the battle for the front of the midfield is also more competitive than it was this time last year. So I think we're guaranteed for a better race than last year, in a kind of similar way to Russia this year. Going into the Russian Grand Prix, we were dreading it, let's be honest. But it was basically a guarantee that we were going to have a better race because of the circumstances going in to race day with the starting grid. You had the Red Bulls at the back and things like that. So I think we'll definitely get a better race than last year at this track. I don't know if it'll be good. I don't want to promise that kind of thing because you never know in this sport. You could have a boring race at any time. No one thought we'd have a boring Canadian Grand Prix this year, and we did. So I don't know, but I think we're definitely guaranteed a good battle with the tyres between the top three teams, because Red Bull are the best on their tyres and they're at the back of that three-way fight, and Mercedes, if they're not running their rear wheel spacers on their wheel rims, then they are the worst on tyre wear, and they're maybe going to be at the front of the grid. So we'll see. Hopefully it is a good race. Simon Troop, Alex Jacques is the F2 commentator. Oh, him. Okay. I didn't know his actual name. That's why I was confused who you were talking about. I would like him in... I like him instead of Crofty for sure. I don't want to say I hate Crofty because he hasn't done anything, personally to me for me to hate him, but I really don't like Crofty. He's so annoying. Just some of the stuff he says, you just think, is this guy for real? But yeah, I prefer him, but there's other people I'd prefer to him, to Alex Jacques as well. Right, let me look through the chat to make sure I include all of your comments. Flores says, oh, this is his qualifying prediction, very early. Hamilton on pole, Vettel second and Bottas third. I'll get on to my predictions, of course, in the build-up to qualifying tomorrow. Simon Treat, Mercedes will turn the engine mode on for quali, absolutely. Rona Brady thought my eyes were playing tricks on me when I saw Bottas quickest. Right, I'm just looking through. Rona Brady also, he asks, is Red Bull's pace genuine or just Friday pace? When it comes to the qualifying pace, it's not genuine because Mercedes and Ferrari still have to turn up their engines and take more fuel out, because I think they were running a lot more conservatively compared to Red Bull. But when it comes to the long runs in the second half of practice 2, I don't think that is not genuine. I think that is real pace. I'm just looking at the final couple comments. Flores, Mercedes aren't that good on soft tyres. Do you think this improves Ferrari's chances? It absolutely does. This has been a trait going back, I think, to 2015 with Ferrari compared to Mercedes. The softer the tyres, the closer Ferrari are, or better Ferrari are compared to Mercedes. So yeah, it's a good thing for Ferrari. But as we've seen in 2018, it's not a guarantee they're going to be quick, because the last time we had hypersoft tyres in qualifying, Mercedes were faster. That was Mexico. And then the one before that was, the last time we had hypersofts was Russia. Just look how quick Mercedes were there. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think we'll definitely get an interesting race with the tyres for sure. Ronan Brady saying about Crofty. He would be a better commentator than Crofty, who is actually a better darts commentator than F1. He is. I've heard his darts commentary. And his stats are always wrong. Yep, that does get on my nerves, because I am a bit of a stat guy. And I know my stats. And when he gets one wrong, which to me is obvious, it does annoy me. But there you go. Ivan Jones, do you think of Red Bull qualifying the third row? Do you think, like Brazil, Red Bull will be able to get through the field? I said this in my preview, which, by the way, if you've not checked out the preview for this race, it's in the description down below. I said that they should have the best race pace, but the issue for them is, because Abu Dhabi is a lot harder of a track to pass at than Interlagos, it's not going to be as easy for them to do what they did, for example, with Max Verstappen passing Bottas, Vettel, Raikkonen in 10 or 15 laps. So it's going to be interesting to see if Red Bull can make moves like they did at Brazil. I'm looking forward more to the race, honestly, than qualifying. I know that might sound bad because obviously, the next thing coming up is qualifying, but I really think we're in for a very close race at the top and in the midfield too. And John Hubner saying Haas protesting Force India. Don't worry, at the end of this stream I have plenty to say about that. Plenty to say. Simon Troop, do you think Max can win this race? Definitely. I think he can. Depends, of course, though, on the start of the race and just what happens. Hopefully he doesn't have an issue tomorrow in qualifying and gets up there in at least 5th place. And then he set himself up good for the race, I think. But, right, we'll move on, guys, I think, to the midfield. And the first 3 teams in the midfield, McLaren, Renault and Force India. So, first up, McLaren. Now, pace-wise, they're not as bad as I thought they would be. I thought they would be right at the back in practice 2, but they weren't. They looked as though they did have a faster car than Williams, which I didn't think would happen. I thought Williams would have a faster car. But yeah, McLaren do look slightly better, but I don't think they're going to be qualifying in the top 10. I just don't see it. McLaren still, to me, look way too far off teams like Haas, Renault, even Force India right now, pace-wise, to be able to get into the top 10 for qualifying, or maybe the race. Also, I just want to say, this picture of the McLaren of Fernando Alonso is absolutely gorgeous. Just look at that. I will say with Abu Dhabi, you do get some of the best pictures throughout the entire season, so definitely a plus of us here. But we'll move on to Renault. Renault, I have to say, were better than expected. I did not think they would have a car, at least one car in the top 10 in both practice 1 and practice 2, today. I didn't think they would. I thought Renault would be at best, say where Pierre Gasly was, P11, P12, a decent car, but just not good enough. You know what I mean? But yeah, they've got a good car. I don't know if they'll maintain that. I'm not too sure they will maintain that tomorrow because, of course, we know that Renault's qualifying boost, I guess you could say, or party mode is not as powerful as the one with the Ferrari in the Haas or Sauber or the Mercedes in the Force India car. But I think more importantly for the race, I think they do have a good enough car to get points. For qualifying, I'm still not too sure. I still think Sauber are going to improve, and I think Sauber have been kind of sandbagging today. And I think Force India are close enough to get past them in qualifying. So we'll see, but it is definitely looking better than expected. At least that is a good sign for Renault. And next up is Force India, who are about where I expected. They are, at best, just inside the top 10. I think Esteban Ocon was in the top 10 both times in Practice 1 and Practice 2. In Practice 1, he was in 5th place, but again, the conditions in Practice 1 are not representative of what we're going to get in qualifying or the race. So Practice 2 is what you have to look at in terms of, you know, who is quick and who is not. And Force India look about, again, where I expected them to be. 10th, 11th, 12th place, that's about where they are. So no real surprise from Force India. Of course, there has been controversy with Force India this weekend. But again, we'll get onto that later on because I have a lot to say about that. But pace-wise, Force India looking okay, nothing special. But when it comes to the battle for 7th in the Constructors between them and Sauber, they have to hope that Sauber are not sandbagging. I think Sauber are, but they have to hope that they're not, and that Sauber are slower than Force India, because if Sauber jump forward like they did in Mexico and Brazil after a not so good practice, I think Force India just might be in trouble. But guys, what do you think about those three teams for McLaren? Can they do anything this weekend other than be terrible? For Renault, do you think they can get the top 10 in qualifying with one of their cars? And for Force India, where do you see them pace-wise at this race? Do you think pace-wise they are, you know, where you expect them to be, or maybe not as good as you thought they would be, or maybe better? Put it in the chat right now and I will read out your comments regarding this. Right, let me take a look. Ronan Brady, I think Hulkenberg might get P10. If he pulls out a good lap, I think, yeah, P10 is a possibility. McLaren's most TV time will be the Guard of Honour. That's from Ben McCarthy. Yes, it will. Francisco, I'm praying for some points for Alonso. I am as well, but I don't think realistically that is going to happen. I think he can get up to, say, 13th like he was in Practice 2 for the race. I don't think he can do that in qualifying, but yeah, I'm praying that Alonso does get points, but even if he doesn't, as long as he has a competitive race where he shows why he is still one of the most beloved on the grid, then that would be enough, I think, for me. Simon Troop, I think Russell will win the F2 title tomorrow. Yes, of course, we do have that going on tomorrow. I think Russell will win it. He's too far ahead of Albon. Russell will win it, and he thoroughly deserves it. He's been the best driver this season. He's been better for me than Norris, Albon, De Vries. Who else have we got in there? I'm trying to think of other drivers that have been up there competing. Sete Camera. I think Russell has been clearly the best driver in F2 this season. Flores asks, which of the midfield teams will make the biggest leap forward next season? I think... actually, I'm trying to think. For me, it's either going to be Force India or Sauber in terms of position in the Constructors, or position in the running order of pace, but I think pace-wise, it will be Renault who make the biggest leap forward, because with them finishing 4th, they're going to get a lot more money than they did this time last year for finishing 6th in the Constructors. They're getting more, you know, top quality personnel on board. And we know with Daniel Ricciardo coming, that's a plus. And because they're a manufacturer, I know their engine is not that good. But if they can improve it for 2019 and keep it close enough to be competitive, engine-wise, maybe not, you know, right up there, because I think that's too much to ask. But if they're, say, half a second off the Ferrari or Mercedes power unit throughout 2019, sorry, then I think that'd be good enough. But I think Renault pace-wise will escape the midfield and kind of be in like a no man's land type of position. They won't be fast enough at all to be up there with Mercedes, Ferrari or Red Bull, but they will be too fast for Haas, Force India, Sauber. The rest goes on. That's what I think. So I think Renault will have a good winter. And I think Renault even said, I think it was at the Brazilian Grand Prix, maybe it was last week, Nick Chester, I think, came out and said that Renault are already making some really good gains with the 2019 car. And that's already in November, so imagine what they could do, you know, once we get to pre-season testing. Force India may lose all points for this year. That's from John Huebner. Yeah, again, though, we'll get onto that later on. I'll get onto the rest of the midfield shortly. Ronan Brady, what's your opinion on the curb at the last corner? That curb, I know the drivers don't like it because they can't track extend and gain more speed. And of course, drivers are trying to extract as much speed from the car as possible. But it's there to stop them extending the track. And for me, that is absolutely fair. So, yeah, I agree with it. You need to put them there. I know, you know, they can send the car up into the air. Of course, we do have that whole thing with the Macau crash last week, but I think they're fine. It stops people track extending or corner cutting, because you're not want to go over that. One, because you don't want to damage your car, and two, it's not a good feeling when you come back down from the air. Right, let me just look through these comments in the chat. Are you going to a race next year, Chaz? That's from Ben McCarthy. I don't know, honestly. I haven't even thought about that. Maybe. I don't know what I'd do for the channel that weekend, but I honestly have no idea. If I do go to a race, though, I will let you guys know for sure, and I'll try and do something around that weekend. I hope there'll be a safety car to spice up the action. We don't really get safety cars here, do we? We had one in 2010, 2012, a couple times because of crashed cars and what was a chaotic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And then since then, I don't think we have had a safety car. So I think the last safety car at this race was 2012. So yeah, if we get a safety car, could get a even better race. Andrew Jury, the most interesting thing about the Yas Marina circuit is a curb. It is. I have to admit, you know, there are a couple of good straights where you can get past if you get a good slipstream and you're good in a straight line, you have DRS, and the chicanes, they do give you a good chance to pass, but at the end of the day, this track is just not good enough for racing. Too many 90-degree corners, too many corners where it's impossible to go for a move. I don't like this track. Again, it has too many 90-degree corners. I hate 90-degree corners. The reason I hate them, guys, is because those types of corners, you can't possibly go for a move or even think about going for a move. At least into a slow corner or a fast corner, you can either get close under braking or get a slipstream and, you know, follow a bit closer in a fast corner. But with 90-degree corners, you can't do any of that. You're not going to really gain anything to the car ahead in a 90-degree corner because of just the way they are. I hate 90-degree corners, and if I was a track designer, I wouldn't have a single one of them on my track. It would be full of fast and slow corners, just like it should be. Francisco, the only chance this is going to be a good race is crashes and safety cars. Well, again, 2012, that's the best race we've had here. That had plenty of it. Right, let me just look through the chat, see if I missed any comments. Just looking through the chat. Oh, Francisco, what about Kimi winning the race? Kimi, he could. The reason is, look at him compared to Sebastian Vettel so far. He was faster in practice 1 and practice 2. And we do know that this is a good Kimi Raikkonen track. Not just because he won here in 2012, but look at 2015. He finished on the podium and not too far off the 2 Mercedes. In 2016, he was running in 3rd, but had some kind of issue. I can't remember why he dropped back. I think he had bad tyre wear or some kind of braking issue. Last year, he wasn't too good, but when he wants to be good, and you never know with Kimi, this is a good track for Kimi Raikkonen. So if he is in the mood for a final good race for the Scuderia, then why not? Why not? It'd be great to see that. But we'll move on from those teams and go on to the rest of the midfield. First off, Williams, there's nothing to say, as we've been doing ever since, I think, was it the Canadian Grand Prix of Williams? We're just going to quickly move on because, again, there's nothing to talk about. They are so slow. Next up, Toro Rosso. Now, they didn't have the best practice one. Pierre Gasly, I think, had a gearbox oil fire or something to do with the gearbox in practice 1, so that wasn't good. And that's why I said earlier that Pierre Gasly might be having to take a penalty at some point. But pace-wise, I think with Gasly, forget Hartley, because Hartley, as we know, when it comes to one-lap pace, is just not good enough. But for Gasly, he does look in a good position to me. Consistently, P11 in both practice sessions, not too far off the top 10. If they can find more pace over the night, then, with a setup change or something like that, then you never know, he could get into the top 10. He could, especially if he does pull out a great lap. And of course, he does have great memories here because he took the F2, or at the time GP2 title, at this track 2 years ago. So don't count out Pierre Gasly. He could be a surprise in qualifying. Next up is Haas. Now, pace-wise, for me, Haas do look, right now, they look as though they do have the best car in the midfield. I'm not going to say that they're guaranteed to be that in qualifying like I did for Brazil, because look what happened in Brazil. They disappointed, and then Sauber took that. So I think they will definitely get a car into Q3. They should, pace-wise, get both cars into Q3. But again, because of how they disappointed in qualifying at Brazil, I'm not going to jump the gun and say they're going to be right up there because, well, I don't know. We'll have to see what Sauber do. And talking of Sauber, let's go on to them finally. And yeah, pace-wise, not too great. But again, I think they're sandbagging like Ferrari normally do on a Friday. I think when it comes to practice 3, don't be surprised if Charles Leclerc is up in P8 or P9. I think they were running a bit more fuel in the car compared to Force India and Haas and Renault. I think they'll be up there in the top 10 with one of their cars in qualifying. Because again, the improvement they normally make from Friday practice to qualifying is normally very good. So I think Sauber are going to be good in qualifying tomorrow. But guys, what do you think about those 4 teams? We'll forget about Williams. Toro Rosso, do you think with Pierre Gasly they can get into the top 10? For Haas, do you think they do have the best car in the midfield? And for Sauber, do you think Sauber, were sandbagging today? Or do you think that the pace they have shown is what they have? That's as fast as they can go. Put in the comments right now, or in the chat, sorry, and I will read out your comment. Right, let me just clear my throat there. I was about to go. Right, let's take a look, shall we? Scuderia D, hello to you. Halam899 says Sauber will get 7th and 9th tomorrow. That's a bit ambitious, but yeah, I think Sauber could definitely get a car into Q3. I don't know if they'll get both cars in. We'll have to see. Andrew Drury, last year Sauber were ahead of Toro Rosso at this track. I can't remember if they were or not. I'll be honest, I can't remember what Sauber were really doing last year, excluding their 2 points finishes. But if they were, then, well, there you go. Right. Let me just look at some more comments. Gina, great to see him. I think Sauber will have 2 cars in the top 10. Yep, I think Sauber are going to have I think Sauber are going to have a good qualifying. I don't know how much they were holding back. That's the thing with Sauber and with Ferrari. You know they're holding back, but you just don't know how much they are. I'd love to know, the fuel loads. I'd love to know that. I think you guys would as well, but I guess we'll just have to see in qualifying. Scuderia D, don't highly rate Sauber yet. It could come downhill. Saying don't highly rate Sauber yet. Who knows, it could come downhill. I think people are kind of jumping the gun and overrating what they could do. For 2019. I know they've made a lot of progress this year, but let's not jump the gun. You don't know who is going to be good or not good with next year's regulations. We'll have to see, but yeah, they should be good next season with Kimi Raikkonen and Giovinazzi's speed, but as you said, it could come downhill. We thought after 2015, where Sauber improved a lot compared to 2014, that Sauber were now going to start slowly improving, and then they went right to the back of the grid. So, again, I don't want to jump the gun. We don't know, of course, what's going to happen in the future. John Hubner reckons that Kimi will get a podium next year for Sauber. I don't think he will. I don't think there's any chance of that. If there's a wet race or a race where, even if it's dry but it's chaotic like a Baku, then maybe he can get into the top 5. But I'll be honest, I don't think he has a chance of getting a podium. I don't think the Sauber will be that good. And I don't think we'll get, such a chaotic race. Ronald, now that Marcus Ericsson left Sauber, the team will collapse, obviously. I will say, though, I think Ericsson does deserve to stay. I think he does. I think Ericsson in 2018 has done enough for a seat. I know why they want to put Giovinazzi in, because he is quick. But I think Ericsson, what you're getting is, yes, a driver that is maybe slower, but I think a driver that, when it comes to the race, is going to keep his head and not make silly mistakes. Giovinazzi, I'm not too sure about the guy. I think he's kind of a Maldonado-ish kind of driver. He has got a lot of speed. You cannot doubt it. He's a very quick guy. But when it comes to, the races and keeping it together and not having silly crashes, I'm not too sure if Giovinazzi is good enough in that department. But I think we'll move on from that and move on basically from the practice review and now go on to a couple of news stories that have come out today and yesterday in the world of F1. So first off, Esteban Ocon is confirmed as the reserve driver at Mercedes for 2019. Now there is rumours that he might be the reserve driver for the team he's currently driving for, Force India and also Williams. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but it has been confirmed that he is the reserve driver at Mercedes for 2019. And I have to say, for Mercedes, they do have a good array of drivers testing for them, whether that's in a simulator or out on track, because also it's been announced that Stoffel Van Dorn, I think, will be doing simulator work for Mercedes. So they do have a good array of personnel, whether that comes to drivers or, you know, engineers or no matter. They do have some good people at the team, and Ocon will definitely, I think, be occupied during 2019. And you never know, if Kubica gets to Monaco and doesn't think he can do that race and Ocon is the reserve driver, obviously Kubica is going to struggle with the hairpin at Monaco, then maybe Ocon will be doing the Monaco Grand Prix. We'll have to see though. So we'll move on from that and go on to the biggest news, that Robert Kubica is back in F1 for the first time since 2010. His last race actually was the 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix about 8 years ago. Now, you know, it's great to see him back. It's a fantastic comeback story. He was almost killed in that rally crash at the start of 2011 and thankfully has worked his way back. And I think he's kind of an inspiration, you know, to us and to just anyone, that even if you have such a bad predicament like he had, you can still make it back to where you were, or maybe even improve on that compared to where you were before, you know, something bad happened. So very inspirational from Robert Kubica. But I will say, when it comes to does he deserve this seat based on speed or talent, considering the drivers that are missing out for 2019, I don't think he should get this seat. I think Esteban Ocon should, alongside George Russell. But at the end of the day, the reason they picked Kubica was because Kubica has sponsors and has money, along with his talent that hopefully he hasn't lost after his accident. And Ocon, he doesn't. And Ocon only wanted Ocon and Mercedes, only wanted a 1-year deal. So they had to go with Kubica. The reason Sirotkin is not staying is because his backers, S&P Racing, have criticised Williams over how poor the car was. I don't think Williams can be too, up in arms about it. I think they deserve some criticism from someone kind of internally about how bad the car is and how bad the situation is. So S&P Racing, I don't know if they've advised or basically pulled Sirotkin out of the team, but basically Sirotkin's not racing for 2019 for Williams because the car is too bad. So there you go. Very interesting. Maybe we'll get into that further in the future. But it is great to see Robert back. And hopefully in 2019, one, the Williams car is better, because if it's not, then we're not going to see if Kubica is good enough or not. And if it is better, hopefully Kubica does show that he has, the talent to still, be quick, have good races. Because if he shows the same speed as he did before his accident, I think Kubica by 2020 will be out of Williams and maybe closer to the front of the field in 2020. I'm not going to say who, but I don't think, if he is very, very quick in 2019, I don't think he's going to be staying around at Williams for too long. But we'll move on from that. And we'll go on to this final story about Haas with Force India. So, what Haas have done, they have protested Force India because, in their opinion, they think that Force India, and they've kind of done this on a technicality in the rules, what they're saying is that Force India should be disqualified from the championship because even though they went from Sahara, Force India to Racing Point Force India, they haven't built the cars themselves, during the season. They're using another team's car, basically, which, again, it's a technicality. I guess I can see their point, but I have to say with Haas, they are such massive hypocrites. Their chassis is built by Dallara, and they have suspension parts, a gearbox, an engine from Ferrari. It is very rich for Haas to be coming out with this. That, we want you to be disqualified from the championship because you haven't built your car. Well, Haas, 70% of your car is not yours. So, what are you on about? If Renault did this, then fine, because at least Renault aren't, I guess, guilty of the same thing. And I know, what Haas do is fine by the rules because they exploited a loophole. I get that. But it's very rich for them to be coming out and saying this. When, again, their chassis is built by Dallara, and they have suspension, gearbox, and engine from Ferrari. I find it amazing that they are the team to protest this. I find it amazing that they have done this. I can't believe it. And I have to say, over the last couple of months, I have lost a bit of, not respect, but I've kind of fell out of love with Haas because they do come across as spoilt kids with what they're doing, with the whole disqualification from the Italian Grand Prix, saying, when Renault protested their, I think, was it their brakes or suspension part or something like that? Oh no, it was the barge board, wasn't it? I think it was. Or the front wing. I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was, Renault protested it, and then Haas came out and said, I think something to the accord of, Renault are just mad that we're faster than them. Well, Haas, Renault have beat you to fourth in the Constructors. So, no need to get a bit salty. And by the way, Haas, you were warned at least a month in advance about this aerodynamic part, when it comes to the legality of it within the regulations. You were warned, you didn't heed it, and you got disqualified deservedly. And you lost your appeal deservedly. I just don't get what Haas are doing right now. They're not making any friends with what they're doing. They're just making lots of enemies. Something you don't want to be doing in your third season as a team in F1. And yeah, I kind of fell out of love with Haas. I really, really got ticked off about what they were, protesting Force India about. I was so angry last night. I've calmed down actually quite a bit from last night. I felt like almost recording a commentary and just going mental basically for 15 minutes. But yeah, I can't believe Haas are saying this. Such hypocrites. So hypocritical. And again, they are so salty over losing fourth to Renault. They are so salty. You got to think as well for Haas, this is their best season in F1 to date. Why can't they just enjoy that? It's amazing they've managed in their third season to get up to fifth in the Constructors and be up there with the big boys. But they're getting, I don't know, greedy, or again, they're just a bit salty that they lost fourth to Renault, when at the end of the day, the reason they lost fourth to Renault is because, despite them having the better car, they have bottled it a lot more on race day compared to Renault. You can say what you want about Renault, but when it comes to getting results, Renault are way better than Haas. In a very similar situation to Mercedes and Ferrari. Renault are basically kind of like Mercedes. Maybe not the fastest car, but when it comes to getting results on race day, they are very good at that. And Haas are like Ferrari. They have the pace, but they can't deliver on it every single time, or even most of the time. So, yeah, that's what I have to say on Haas. What do you guys think about those news stories? What do you think about Haas protesting Force India? What do you think about Kubica coming back into F1 with Williams? And what, do you think about Esteban Ocon becoming the reserve driver at Mercedes? Put in the chat right now. And for the next 10 minutes, I'll read out your comments and see what you guys have to say. Right. I think I've calmed down a bit from that slight rant, I think. And also, Ronald was saying in the chat, very rich, lol, their new sponsor. I think they have maybe not pushed Haas to doing this, but I think they've definitely played a part. They are also salty about the whole Force India thing. They thought they were going to walk into Force India and buy everything, and you know, it's going to be the rich energy F1 team or whatever the hell they wanted it to be. But yeah, I think they're also a bit salty. So yeah. Right. Francisco, if Force India gets disqualified from all the races, do Haas beat Renault for 4th? I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to calculate and go through the races. I don't think they would, because Renault would also gain some points from Force India being disqualified from some of them. So even if that happened, I still think Renault would hold on to 4th. Of course, we have to see what happens this weekend as well, if that does become an issue. But Haas, again, are so salty. So salty. Just looking at the chat. John Huebner, they want more prize money. Greed. Yep. I think I saw it's a battle over $60 million. Now I know for Haas, you know, they are a very small team in comparison to Renault. But again, why can't you just enjoy what you've done in 2018? You've done well to finish 5th. You should have finished 4th, but you've done well to finish 5th. Can't you just enjoy that? For God's sake. Simon Troop. Haas whinging too much. Absolutely. They just don't... I don't understand why they're doing this. For me, they just need to be quiet and just get on with the final race and then concentrate on the postseason test some 2019 parts designed by Dallara, and then just concentrate on preseason testing for 2019. Just don't... You should never, I think, in F1 go looking for controversy, because it will come back to bite you one day. Right, just looking through the chat at some more comments. Scuderia D, Polish boy back. Will Kubica score points next year? I have no idea if he will or not. I hope he does, but I have no idea. Ben McCarthy, look, Martini have already given up on Williams. I don't think it's because of that, but yeah. Well, they gave up on Williams at the start of the season, didn't they? Announcing they were leaving before the season even started. Andrew Jury, according to the BBC, there's a chance of rain on Sunday evening. Imagine if the first wet race of the year was in the desert. If by some absolute miracle that comes off, I will remember your comment for sure. But I don't think there'll be rain. John Huebner, if Bottas is weak next year, we may see Ocon in his seat. I'm going to be honest, I don't think Ocon really should get the seat at Mercedes for 2020 if Bottas doesn't maybe perform as good. Because at the end of the day, and if you look at it, coming into 2018, there was a couple of things that Esteban Ocon had to do to kind of stand out and absolutely guarantee a seat eventually at Mercedes. Those two things, and I did this in a video on my old channel, I think January, when I was discussing Valtteri Bottas, I talked about the things that Ocon has to do for a seat at Mercedes. And what he has to do, or had to do in 2018, was get a podium, which he hasn't got, and his teammate has, and beat Perez. And right now, he's 9 points behind. Now, you could say, oh, Ocon's been unlucky, and he has had a couple of unlucky moments, but so has Perez. And I've actually gone back and looked at, say, the unlucky moments or retirements, and it would still work out about the same in points. So, Ocon just hasn't been... He has been good, but he hasn't been good enough to really earn a seat at Mercedes absolutely for 2020. I still need to see more, I think, for a Mercedes seat for 2020. I think if Bottas does what is required of him for 2019, he should absolutely 1,000,000% get the 2020 seat. Because I think when it comes to running a team, when it comes to your driver lineup, it's best to try and keep the same lineup if you can every year, because you know you have the continuity with the drivers, engineers, and just everyone in the team, and it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Ben McCarthy, I'm hyping 2019 so much. I can't wait for 2019. I am looking forward to it a lot because I think we have a lot of interesting storylines. For example, can Ferrari finally win in 2019? Will Mercedes defend their title? How will Charles Leclerc do? Is the Red Bull Honda package going to work? Will Daniel Ricciardo at Renault work? Will McLaren and Williams improve? Will Robert Kubica actually be good and not really, I say, bad compared to what he was like before his accident? We have plenty of storylines for 2019. I think 2019 will be very exciting, or at least I hope it is. Just looking. John Hubner, are you going to have someone streaming the winter testing in Spain? No, but I do have something I do have a plan for pre-season testing, but I won't get into it now. I'll get into it once I have stuff confirmed. Right, let me just look through. I want to make sure I include all of your guys' comments, because of course you do put some great comments in here. John Hubner, F1 should bring back in-season testing. You know what? This might be a bit weird to say this, but if I was running the sport, I would allow from January the 1st of the new year up until the, say, I don't know, week before the first race, I would allow the teams to go testing wherever they wanted with the new car and test as long as they wanted and do whatever. But what I would do is then exactly a week before the new season, the first race, exactly a week before, that would be the end of all of the pre-season testing, but then I would completely ban in-season and end-of-season testing. The reason I would do that is because basically what you're saying to the teams is, right, you have from January the 1st until like March, I don't know, the 10th, that's plenty of time for you guys to test your car, get it right, get everything right. If you haven't got it right until a week before the season starts, then tough luck. There you go. So I think that would be a good system. And I think as well they should be allowed to test whatever they want. If Force India want to test at Silverstone and Mercedes want to test at Silverstone and Ferrari want to do it at Maranello or Mugello, and Red Bull want to do it at the Red Bull Ring or maybe Silverstone as well, and McLaren want to go to Catalonia, which I know is a track they do like for testing, then go ahead. But again, I would make it so once we get to a week before the first race, no more testing, and then you can't do any more testing other than the races until January the 1st the next year. Ronald Kvyat did the Ferrari car rain testing, so when it rains, Ferrari should be good. Ronald also says, I hope the Honda engine is competitive, then this season will be great. Or not this season, then the season will be great. Yeah, I really hope Honda do improve, because if they do, then I think we could have a three-way title fight. And that's teams, not just drivers, for 2019. John Huebner, I would have full season testing, but only by the reserve driver. Basically, I'm guessing with your system, basically what you would have would be the old system of testing, but just the race drivers aren't allowed to test. Basically, yeah, I can see why you would want that, but again, I think too much testing might just stretch the gap between the teams a bit too much. But yeah, I don't think testing at that velocity is ever going to come back. I think the current system of testing is going to remain the same for a very long time, unless we get a new FIA president and he wants to make some drastic changes. Andrew Drury, is testing definitely in Spain next year? I heard that they might move to Bahrain to avoid snow. Nope, it's been confirmed. Pre-season testing is from February the 18th for the first test until the 21st. And then again from the 26th to the March the 1st, I think, at the Circuit de Catalunya in Spain. So nope, it's staying in Spain. The reason is because it just didn't make any sense to go to Bahrain. Logistically and the prices, there was no point. Might as well just keep it at a simple place like that track. And no matter what you think of that track, it is the best place probably on the calendar to test at, because you can test everything. Straight line speed down that long pit straight. Fast corners, there's plenty of those. You can test that. Slow corners, the whole of the last sector is just tons of slow corners. It's the best track I can think of for testing. So, yeah. I think it's a good choice that we are staying at that track. Right, I'll read out probably one more comment or answer one more question, and then I will come to the end of this stream, and I will let you guys know what's going down tomorrow on the channel. And make sure you do remember the times for tomorrow, because it is a bit different to Brazil. Francisco, do you like Barcelona for racing? For racing, no, it's not a good track, but for testing, it is one of the best, if not the best out there. I'd like F1 testing to go to Jerez, then we won't know the pecking order when F1 returns there 3 months later. Yeah, I see your point, but even if they tested in Jerez, I think the teams would still complain, because it would be like, why are we testing at a track we're not going to use and that isn't as good as the Circuit de Catalunya? Right, the final question or comment is from Ben McCarthy. Who is F1's most underrated driver ever? Most underrated driver ever? That's an interesting one. Make sure you guys put some drivers in the comments or in the chat. Well, Sergio Perez, that's one. Absolutely. I think that guy, if you did put him in a Ferrari, would surprise a lot. Pascal Wehrlein, underrated. All time, well, you've got who? Heinz-Harald Frentzen, I guess, but he didn't do that well at Williams in 97. Martin Brundle, I think, was a bit underrated. He never really got in a great car or a good enough car to win races. Johnny Herbert, I think he was a bit underrated. I think Jarno Trulli was a bit underrated. I think his qualifying speed was mental. Absolutely mental. I don't really know who I'd go for as the most underrated ever. John Huebner, last name. Ronald Jos Verstappen. Francisco says Nico Hulkenberg and also Rubens Barrichello. John Alesi from Andrew Drury. Ben McCarthy says Jack Brabham or Nick Heidfeld. Francisco also says Heidfeld. Ronald says Takuma Sato. Some very good ones there. I think I'll be honest, I think any driver that you consider overrated, if he does get into a car that is good enough to win races, I don't really count him anymore as underrated, because once you get into that position, then we find out if you're good enough or not, and whether you are underrated or overrated. So I wouldn't consider Barrichello in that, because we saw at Ferrari that he can win races, but he was nowhere near the level of Michael Schumacher. I think Jean Alesi is a very underrated driver, because he did have a couple of cars which were good enough to win races in, but not, 5 races a season, 1 or 2 here or there. Andrew Drury says Kobayashi. I don't think he was underrated. I think he was about what he was. John Hubner says Eddie Irvine. Yeah, I think Irvine was Wait, was Irvine underrated? Nah. Irvine was better than people give him credit for, but I don't think he was underrated. Nor do I think he was overrated. I think he was about what you would think of him, but I think people don't give him enough credit. Ronald says Ralf Schumacher. I disagree. I think Ralf Schumacher, once he got into a fast enough car, he looked good at times, but then once he raced his brother, he had the mental toughness of a pillow. So, yeah, I wouldn't say Ralf Schumacher very mentally weak when it came to racing, especially against his successful brother. But who am I going to go for the most underrated? There's so many choices. I don't know. Just trying to look through the chat to just look through those choices. You know what? I'm going to go Jean Alesi, because he never had a car that was good enough to win races, consistently. Yes, he won in 95, but that was his only win of his career, and it was a lucky win, even though it was a great win. He only won the race because Michael Schumacher was stuck in the pits for about 2 laps. So yeah, I'd say Jean Alesi. If he had a dominant car, I think Alesi could have won a World Drivers' Championship for sure. But guys, that is the end of this practice review. The last time we review a practice session in 2018. Has been great doing these streams on a Friday evening, of course. But what is coming up tomorrow on the channel? Here you go. So I'll be live at 12 PM UK time for the qualifying watch along. Qualifying officially starts at 1 PM UK time. And then I will be live at 5 PM UK time until about 6 or 6:30 for the review of qualifying. So make sure, guys, you get this, noted down, and that you make sure to join me for that tomorrow. I'm going to have a very busy, and I think you guys will as well, have a very busy Saturday afternoon, of course, if you are in Europe, depending, of course, where you are in the world. But guys, thank you very much for coming along to this live stream. Has been great as always. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and comment down below what did you think of this video and what did you think of practice and the news stories we covered at the end of this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe. We will be doing this for every race weekend in 2019. So either subscribe on the bottom right of the screen, you can do it there by clicking subscribe, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to join our Discord server. Link below right at the bottom is our Discord server link. Discord is the best way to get notifications for my videos. So if you want notifications, you have to join that server. As well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. Great place to keep up to date with me and what is going on with the channel. And check out chazerhd.com. A great place to keep up to date again with me and the content on the channel. But guys, until qualifying tomorrow and the qualifying watch along at 12 PM UK time tomorrow, it's been me, ChazerHD. Goodbye.